Even the most powerful kingdoms must one day fade away. Sometimes it takes decades, sometimes centuries, and some kingdoms can even extend their survival for thousands of years. The great kingdom of Gondor would have to face the bitter enemy of time, as it slowly declined over thousands of years. And in its history, there were 3 events that played an iconic role in its downfall. Hey guys, it's Carl here, and in today's episode, we'll be unraveling the first calamity of Gondor, the civil war known as the Kinstrife. So even after Sauron's defeat at the end of the Second Age, there were still some evil factions that were determined to attack Gondor, such as the Easterlings. And these evil men would often travel to the west to raid and pillage the lands. This growing threat had to be dealt with, and in the year 1248, the king of Gondor called Minalcar decided to lead a great army to defeat the Easterlings, and some of his allies such as the Northmen would join his force, for their lands had suffered tremendously from the Easterling attacks. These Northmen were a divided people, for they had many tribes which were led by different leaders, though there was one lord who stood out in particular, Vidugavia, and he was the most powerful of the northern princes, and he called himself the King of Rhovanion. His land lay between Greenwood the Great and the river Celduin, and Gondor chose to reward his people handsomely for the great help they provided in this war. These Northmen were quite a formidable faction, and it soon dawned on King Minalcar that strengthening Gondor's bond with the Northmen was crucial for its future, so that together they could form a powerful alliance. And King Minalcar decided to employ many of these Northmen into his service, and he also gave them a high rank in his armies. Now the king was wise enough to appreciate that the best way to form an alliance was to understand the other faction and its culture. And so in the year 1250, he sent out his son called Valacar to live with King Vidugavia as an ambassador, so that he could become familiar with their language, manners, and policy. This plan would work out extremely well, far better than Minalcar could ever have imagined. For not only did his son learn about the Northmen's culture, but he also grew to love their lands and people, and he even fell in love with King Vidugavia's daughter, called Vidumavi. While they were living in the lands of the Northmen, they would have a son together, and they gave him a Northman name, Vinetaria. Now some of the people of Gondor were troubled by this marriage, for some of the high men of Gondor were already uneasy, and they disapproved of the Northmen that lived in their lands. And it seemed surreal to them that their future king, or any son of the king for that matter, would choose to marry a woman of a lesser and foreign race. They were scared that the king's descendants would inherit the shorter lifespan, and that this would bring about the fall of the majesty of the kings of men. And by the time King Valacar grew old, there was a lot of unrest in the southern provinces of Gondor, and even some pockets of open rebellion. This would eventually grow into a terrible civil war after the death of King Valacar, for the rebel factions refused to accept his son as their king, even though he had taken up a Gondorian name called Eldacar, and he abandoned his Northman name. Now these rebellions were led by other descendants of the kings, and the greatest among them was called Castamir. He had the best claim to the throne after Eldacar, for they were in fact second cousins, and he was also the captain of the ships of Gondor. This position gave him quite an advantage, for many of the people of Gondor that lived near its coasts and its great havens were loyal to him, such as those of Pelargir and Umbar. And all of this gave Castamir the greatest army out of all of the rebel forces. It's quite tragic that this civil war started from a pointless fear, for in reality, Eldacar's mixed heritage didn't shorten his lifespan, and he actually lived longer than his father. Now Eldacar was determined to oppose this rebellion to the end of his strength, and this determination was fueled by the fearless spirit of his Northman heritage. Through his valor and leadership, he managed to resist these rebels for 5 long years, though his enemies were slowly winning this war. And in the year 1437, they finally surrounded him and besieged him in the great city of Osgiliath. This final battle would bring about a lot of ruin, for under Castamir's command, the rebel forces committed many terrible acts of violence. They starved the army of Eldacar, and when they attacked the city, they carried out excessive slaughter and destruction, which was completely unnecessary to win the civil war. The capital city of Osgiliath was set on fire, and it was left as a burning ruin, and the rebels destroyed the Tower of the Stone of Osgiliath, which held the Palantir, and this powerful artifact was lost in the waters of the River Anduin. Eldakar's forces put up a defiant struggle against the rebels, and even though they fought with every inch of their strength, they were eventually overwhelmed. Yet some hope still remained. For Eldakar managed to escape this terrible onslaught, and he fled to the lands of his mother in Rhovanion, where he lived once more amongst the Northmen. This land offered him some refuge, a place where he could slowly recover his strength, and perhaps one day he might even recover the throne that was stolen from him. Now, since the city of Osgiliath had finally fallen, Castamir could now claim his victory and the throne of Gondor. He was a very cruel man, and after his victory, one of his very first orders was to execute the son of Eldakar called Ornendil, who had been captured during the fall of Osgiliath. Under Castamir's rule, many of the provinces of Gondor suffered, such as Minas Anor and Ithilien, for he was an arrogant and selfish king, and he only cared for his ships, his fleet, and his seaports, and he even tried to move the king's seat to Pelargir. The people of Gondor's northern lands would soon realize that Eldakar was the rightful king, and they had a newfound respect for him, and a burning hatred for Castamir, the usurper. They were determined to restore the proper kingship, and over the next 10 years, many soldiers from Gondor's northern lands, such as Kalinardon, Ithilien, and Minas Anor, would travel to the north to join Eldakar's army. Their numbers also included many Northmen who had chosen to fight for Eldakar, and in the year 1447, Eldakar felt that the time was ripe to reclaim his throne, and he led this great army out of the north. As they passed through the lands of Gondor, many of its people flocked to his banner, and they would finally face Castamir's army in Lebanon at the crossings of Eru. Now many of Gondor's greatest warriors would fall in this battle, as they were slain by their own people, and Eldakar would actually come face to face with Castamir upon the battlefield, and these two cousins would fight one another. It's quite poetic that Eldakar, the half-blood, would manage to defeat Castamir, the pure-blooded Gondorian, in this duel, and in the process he avenged the death of his son and he restored his kingship. The civil war was finally over, though some of the rebels managed to escape, including Castamir's sons, and they took refuge in the city of Pelargir. Eldakar didn't have any ships in his army, and so he couldn't attack this city by sea, and this gave the rebel force enough time to gather as many men as they could before they sailed away to establish a new home in Umbar. They would turn the city into a refuge for anyone that was ready to oppose the kings of Gondor, and they became a powerful naval threat that would constantly attack and pillage the sea traffic and the coastlands of Gondor. Apart from the new threat of the Corsairs of Umbar, the loss of the city also weakened Gondor's influence and their strength in the south, for it used to play a crucial role in Gondor's defense against the men of Harad. To make matters worse, Gondor would never fully recover from the civil war, for this terrible event had ravaged its lands and cities, and many Gondorian lives were lost in battle. To restore their numbers, the people of Gondor started to mingle with the Northmen who joined their population, and at first this mingling didn't hasten the waning of the Dunedain as they had feared. Though over time, this waning still took place, slowly as it had before, little by little. For this waning was, above all, actually due to the land of Middle-earth, and the slow withdrawal of the gifts of Numenor after its downfall. Anyway guys, this wraps up today's video, and I hope you enjoyed it. How do you feel about King Minalcar, Valacar, and Castamir? Do you think it was smart on Minalcar's part to send his son among the Northmen, since not doing so might have actually prevented the civil war? Or do you believe that it was best for Gondor to go through this ordeal to strengthen their alliance with the Northmen? Personally, I think that the bond that Gondor would forge with the Northmen was crucial for their future, and the stronger their alliance was, the better chance they stood at facing the servants of Sauron, so I think it was more than worth it. Though again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. As always, I'd like to give a quick shout out to all my patrons that choose to support this channel. Your help and support make this channel possible, and I really appreciate it. Particularly my Valar tier patrons, Michelangelo and T. Gorman, and also my Wizard tier patrons, James Todgel, Andrew Bomer, Mike Feeney, Roland Mervold, and Tamar Baines. If you like the work that we do on this channel and want to support us, check out our Patreon page in the video description, where you can unlock some really cool perks. You can also support us by checking out our store and by following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and joining our Discord server. All of these links can be found in the video description. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe to join our fellowship today. Until next time, friends, when we'll once again explore the magical world and lore of Middle-earth.